For centuries, various cultures believed that they could cure drought by performing a tribal rain dance. The belief was that such ceremonies would appease the gods causing the dry spell and send rain. But what if it was true? Not only that, what if you could conjure rain instantly, just by thinking about it? Hi folks, I'm Johnny and welcome to The Oddest. I mean, I'm fairly sure that dancing for the gods wouldn't bring rain, but you can see why these ancient tribes would believe this. After weeks or months of dry weather, have a wee dance and statistically speaking, it's bound to rain sometime, right? And when it did, it only reinforced their belief that the dance is what made it all happen. In this story, it rained for a guy who got the nickname Rain Man. No, not this Rain Man. Anyway, let's dive into the insane story of Donnie Decker. Donald Decker, also known as Donnie, had a turbulent life. By the year 1983, Donnie, at the age of 21, was already serving time at Monroe County Correctional Facility in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, for being involved in the receipt of stolen property. In February of that year, Donnie's grandfather, James Kishaw, passed away, which brought a lot of relief to Donnie, who had suffered at the hands of his grandfather. During the weekend of the funeral, Donnie was temporarily released from prison to attend the event. However, upon witnessing the outpouring of sympathy for his late grandfather, whom he obviously despised, well, Donnie became distraught. It was unbearable for him to hear everyone else speaking so highly of someone who had abused him in the past. It was only Donnie who knew about James Kishaw's dark secret regarding the abuse of his 7-year-old grandson.
No other part of the family knew anything about what happened, and it was like good fighting evil. The evil was gone, and I was hoping, that everything would change.
After leaving the funeral due to his inability to handle the way that his family spoke kindly about his abusive grandfather, Donnie found himself staying with Bob and Jeannie Kiefer, family friends. One evening, whilst washing up in the bathroom before supper, Donnie experienced a sensation that he couldn't explain. He later described this as a weird feeling. In that moment, everything changed. Donnie claimed that it was though all the air had been sucked out of that room and he was left standing in a vacuum. He suddenly felt a bone-chilling coldness and his gaze was drawn to the window. There, he saw the face of an old man with a crown on his head laughing maniacally back at him. He was then attacked by an unseen entity which left deep claw marks on his forearm. When he went back downstairs, he didn't want to mention or scare his hosts. During dinner, Bob noticed these marks, and Donnie just attributed them to something upstairs. Later that evening, they felt a similar cold sensation and noticed water running down the living room wall. Believing that they had a leak, they contacted their landlord Ron Van Wy to examine the water pipes. Despite their efforts to locate the source of water, the landlord and Bob were unable to find any leaks or water pipes in the affected areas. Confused, they returned to the living room where they found Donnie sitting on the couch, staring blankly into space. It was then that Ron noticed something really strange. The water seemed to be dripping upwards towards the ceiling. Bob contacted Officer John Bourgeois, whom he knew personally, for help. As they were all standing in the living room observing the water, they noticed a single large drop form in mid-air and shoot off into the kitchen. Well, the Officer Bojan and Richard Wolbert, who had also arrived on the scene, saw water dripping from the walls, the ceiling, even coming up from the floor. The patrolmen observed water drops moving horizontally from wall to wall, but they couldn't make sense of what was happening. Pam Scrofano, the owner of a neighbouring restaurant, also stopped by and witnessed this strange occurrence. Eventually, the officers left to file a report with the police chief. Wonder how that report went. Following the officer's instructions, Donnie and the Kiefers went to Pam's restaurant across the street, whilst the landlord and his wife, they stayed behind. After they left, the inexplicable rain suddenly vanished. Upon arriving at the restaurant, Pam believed Donnie to be possessed when the rain started pouring inside her establishment. She gave Don a crucifix which reportedly burnt him and advised them to seek an exorcism from the church. Upon returning to the Kiefer home, the landlord's wife, Romaine, confronted Donnie and accused him of causing these strange occurrences intentionally. Suddenly, pots and pans began banging in the kitchen, and Donny was lifted off the ground before being violently thrown across the kitchen by an unseen force. When the officers returned with their sceptical police chief, well, he strongly believed that the strange occurrences were caused by a plumbing issue and not anything supernatural. Yeah man, those pipes, they'll get you. He ordered the officers to leave without filing a report. However, against the chief's orders, 3 officers returned the following day to assist the Kiefers in trying to understand what was happening. One of the officers gave Donny a crucifix, which resulted in it burning his hands again. Suddenly, the rain started again and Don was thrown across the room once more. The officers noticed 3 bleeding marks on Don's neck. Ron reached out to various churches seeking help, but none of the priests or ministers he spoke to were willing to assist. However, an evangelical preacher eventually responded to his plea and agreed to perform an exorcism. As the preacher began to pray, Don reportedly began to convulse violently, but when the prayer ended, the rain stopped, and those present felt a shift in the atmosphere, with a return to a peaceful feeling in the house. The next day, Don returned to jail to complete his sentence. According to the warden, Dave Keenhold, when Donny returned to jail, he noticed a distinct change in his demeanour that frightened the other inmates. Donny claimed that he had harnessed an energy, and shortly after it started raining in his cell, pouring in every direction possible. Donny's cellmate pleaded with Warden Keenhold for assistance, prompting him to summon the prison chaplain, Reverend William Blackburn, to perform another exorcism. The initial reaction of the Reverend was to accuse Don of fabricating these events. However, when the cell was filled with a death-like stench and rain started to pour inside, he quickly realised the gravity of the situation and began to recite passages from his Bible. After Donny cried out in pain, the exorcism was completed and the rain stopped, leaving Don in a state of tranquility. Don Decker maintains that he has not encountered anything like the strange events that occurred that weekend nearly 30 years ago. He is convinced that it was his deceased grandfather's spirit that was responsible for these bizarre occurrences. The unexplainable rain has not returned since then, but Don and other witnesses are still searching for answers. Don fully attributes the phenomenon to his grandfather's abuse. However, in 2012, Don was arrested and charged with arson, which some believe has made him appear a little less credible, despite the fact that the incident was unrelated to the events of 1983. The case has been substantiated by the accounts of at least 4 law enforcement officers, a prison supervisor, and has even been featured on the well-known television programmes like Unsolved Mysteries and Paranormal Witness. Despite this, the case has been considered unsolvable for decades, with no scientific explanation available. While some individuals are persuaded that the event was a fabrication, others are convinced that a supernatural power was responsible for all of this, and many paranormal investigators believe it to be authentic. A possible explanation for the strange events that occurred in the Kiefer home was suggested by a researcher who proposed that ice damming on the attic and roof could have led to melted ice entering the home, causing the unexplained phenomena. However, this theory doesn't account for the reports of rain in the restaurant or in the prison cell. The Decker case continues to be a subject of debate, with some questioning if it is a legend, a hoax, or a genuine example of supernatural activity. The question remains whether there is scientific evidence to support these claims, or if it is just purely a matter of belief.
It never happened again. It was all over. I think I survived something that was life-threatening.
Thanks yet again for taking the time to hang out with me today, folks. I hope you're all well. Please take care of yourselves, and remember, keep smiling.